Welcome in, Hokies fans, to this edition of the Tech Sideline podcast. We record on Monday, November 15th, following a great weekend for Virginia Tech athletics. On episode 208 of the Tech Sideline podcast, we'll recap a blowout win on Senior Day for Virginia Tech football over Duke. We'll look back to Virginia Tech basketball's trip up to Annapolis, where they took care of business against Navy, and also look ahead to tonight's matchup against Radford. All of that and much more coming up on episode 208 of the Tech Sideline podcast, which starts right now. We welcome you into episode 208 of the Tech Sideline podcast, however you are taking it in, whether that's archived on Amazon Music, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, SoundCloud, or Stitcher, or if you are in our YouTube channel. If you're watching archived on YouTube, make sure you like, comment, and subscribe to the Tech Sideline YouTube channel. And if you are in the live stream, drop a comment or question for Will and Chris, and we'll get to those with Nick at the end of the show. As always, the Tech Sideline podcast brought to you by the Southeast Regional Training Center. Tech wrestling season opens up this weekend against Ohio State. You can help bring Olympic hopeful athletes to Blacksburg and one of the best and fastest growing wrestling programs in the country. Go to southeastrtc.com to learn more and donate today. We have a happy podcast here on the set for what seems like the first time in maybe a month since Georgia Tech. We've got our usual Monday crew on set. Will Stewart, founder and general manager of Tech Sideline across the way. Chris Coleman, lead analyst and columnist for Tech Sideline to my left. In our fourth chair today, it's Nick Brown, who I know is excited, a Radford native, for the Radford-Virginia Tech game tonight. And behind the scenes, Malcolm Stewart, the best podcast producer in the land. And I'm your host, Jake Lyman. Big win for football, big win for basketball. Not much to complain about today, guys.
Women's soccer, big NCAA tournament win.
Women's soccer advancing to the round of 32.
That was interesting. I watched the very beginning of that game. I watched like the first 12 minutes, I think, whenever Tech scored their first goal. And Tech was just absolutely dominating the early action. And I figured, well, you know, I gave it the old first of all, I don't actually sit and watch entire soccer games. I know the younger generation does. I don't, you know, but I think they had 8 shots on goal in the first, not shots on goal, but shots in the first 12 minutes. And they finally punched win, and I thought, well, this looks easy. And it wound up being 2-1, right?
3-1.
3-1.
They got an
They had like
goal
19 shots and 13 shots on goal or something like that. It was, which is a lot. Yeah. So it was a dominating performance, really.
So apparently there's a pretty good crowd there, too.
I believe so.
There always is for these days for games like that, men's and women's games.
A woman will travel to Arkansas on Friday for the round of 32. Chance to
is
go
Arkansas
to
like the best team in the country?
They're up there. They're nationally seeded, so They might even be number 2.
I think,
the 2 seed.
I think Tech knocked them out of the NCAA tournament within the last few years, right?
I believe so.
Yeah.
It might have been that same year they beat Texas
I think you might be
on
right.
the road.
Yeah.
And then men selection shows today at 1 p.m. So we'll find out where the men's team is going. You would assume they're going to be in one of the toughest schedules in the entire country, beat number 1 Marshall. So both teams should be playing NCAA tournament games this weekend. For football, American football, a big win. Get back on track. 5-5 now on the season, and 1 win away from bowl eligibility. And it may have gone away. We didn't expect it to. 48 points for Virginia Tech and over 500 yards, like Will mentioned a few weeks ago, for the first time since 2018.
Right. Yeah, the first time since that ill-fated ODU game. Virginia Tech had 600 yards of offense that day and lost by 2 touchdowns. And I believe it's been 43 games since they went over 500, and they went for 573 against Duke. Duke will cure what ails you,
Apparently.
And Tech played well, don't get me wrong.
They did. I think I underestimated how bad Duke's defense is.
Yeah, they were awful.
But it's so hard to call Tech games right now. Right? Last year, I thought it was going to be Braxton Burmeister versus the Boston College backup quarterbacks. It turned out to be, Djokovic versus Kadum. This week, I thought it was going to be Holmberg versus I don't know, maybe Kadum, maybe some combination. I don't know what I expected. Instead, we got Burmeister pretty much the whole game. Yeah. So if I had known it was going to be Burmeister versus the Duke backup setting into it, I would have been like, okay, yeah, I'm picking Tech this week. Now I assume it's going to be regular starter on starter next week in Miami.
Yeah.
But it was good to see. It was good to get an easy win like that. You look up at the scoreboard at some point and you're like, wow, it's 27-3. This is a home game for Virginia Tech against an ACC team. This doesn't happen very often.
No. And it was cool. I was up in the booth calling the game for 3304 Sports and just pregame warm-ups. I'm taking the binoculars out. I'm like, oh, there's Blumrick. He's back. Mm-hmm. Okay, Burmeister's there. Oh, and there's Trey Turner. So it was almost the opposite of the Boston College game where you're looking through pregame warm-ups and
where's everybody at?
Getting a bad feeling.
Yeah, I guess the only guy really out was Hoffman, right? The only
Hoffman
player.
Didn't play. Yeah. 374 of those yards came in the first half. I know a little bit of that was on that Hail Mary that came up a few yards short at the end of the first half, but Tech, they opened up the vertical passing game. They were getting good contributions from the running backs. It was really an all-around good performance.
Really interesting play call to spring Keshawn King for that early touchdown on the pass. It was weird. Like there was a wide receiver. I think Caleb Smith was a wide receiver on the outside. And I couldn't tell whether he was trying to run a route or not, but it was like the Duke cornerback just kind of attacked Caleb Smith. It kind of looked like Smith was blocking him, but it kind of looked like the defensive back was like intentionally locking up with Smith too. So I thought it was a very, very strange play because never really looked like King was looking, or not King, Caleb Smith was looking for the ball or anything like that. But maybe it was just because the cornerback had him locked up. But at any rate, whoever was supposed to be covering King really bit on the run.
And with Keyshawn King, we'd seen a duo of running backs the last couple of weeks with Blackshear and Thomas. Malachi Thomas only gets 7 carries. Mm-hmm. I remember mentioning Keyshawn King comes into the game. I was surprised to see him in there on offense, and then the very first play, he scores a touchdown.
I had assumed the Notre Dame game was going to be his last carry. I mean, just the way the running game has gone since. So, yeah, I was as surprised as anybody, more surprised to see him in the game, to be honest with you. But there he was. He went out there, and after averaging 1.7 yards per carry for the first 4 games of the season, he goes out there and dominates.
Averages 10 yards a carry, 9 carries for 90 yards, and a long of 49.
And a 47-yard touchdown reception.
Yeah.
So, Fuente said after the game that he had been practicing well recently, and the way I interpreted his comments was that his attitude's been good. He's taken things more seriously, and it just had impressive practice performances. So they thought it would be fair to play him, which I agree with. Like play the guys who practice best. That's how you build a program. That's how you establish your expectations for your players and create competition and things like that. So yeah, I think that's the standard that needs to be set.
and a lot of carries for Keyshawn King late in that game, but Raheem Blackshear also early in the game, it seemed like they could just not tackle him. He was just running all over the field, 157 scrimmage yards, 2 touchdowns for Raheem Blackshear on the day.
I'm glad he's finally getting a chance to show how good he is, because he is a very, very good player. He's up to 5.3 yards per carry on the season now?
Let's see. Probably in making up the roster cards about 5 games ago, he was averaging 3.8 or 3.9. And going into this game, I think he was averaging, we got the card right there.
True.
4.9 or something like that.
Right. And I think after the Pitt game, he was still at like 3.7. Or something like so. He's jumped up not quite 2 yards, but you don't go from the 3s to the 5s in the span of a month unless you have some really dominant performances.
He was at 4.8 entering the Duke game.
It's just amazing how everything in the running game has gotten better over the last month. Everything. It's like a switch has been flipped.
And some of the holes were just enormous.
They were massive.
Running into the second level totally untouched.
And especially no Brock Hoffman. Lasita Smith was banged up a few times in that game.
He was.
So, impressive performance from the offensive line as well.
I thought so, particularly when you consider the right guard and the right tackle for most of the game were true freshmen.
Yes. Yeah, Parker Clements got a lot of run at right tackle, and then obviously Caden Moore at right guard. Braxton Burmeister banged up, wasn't sure he was going to start. He had probably his most efficient day of the year. Only 15 attempts, 9 completions, 215 yards, 3 touchdowns for him on the day.
Gosh, I know. And if he had just gotten that screen pass maybe 6 inches higher, we'd be talking about a 600-yard offensive performance instead of 573 or whatever, you know. But yeah, a really good performance by him. Continued to show his toughness to go out there and play with the entire right side of his body. He's got to be in a lot of pain. 215 yards, 3 touchdowns, and also 9 carries for 71 yards. No sacks.
I thought a fair number of those runs looked like design runs to me.
Yeah, I would say there were a couple scrambles, but there were some design runs too, which is kind of risky considering his health situation right now. But I mean, it's also hard to not. I mean, his legs are one of the top weapons of the offense, and how do you not use your top weapon? Right? Like people say, people always talk about, they criticize attack offensive staff for running the quarterbacks too much. And people, I don't know if people are joking or they're serious, but you see it on the boards and you see it in comments to our articles about how Hendon Hooker's probably more effective this year because the Tennessee staff isn't running him as much, and that's not true. They are running the heck out of him. Like, he's had 2 games there with over 20 carries. Coaches do what they have to do to win the football games, except in this case this year they really hadn't with Braxton Burmeister until the last couple weeks when he's kept it more on the read options and things like that. So you always want to strike a happy balance between a quarterback's health and doing what it takes to win the football game. You just kind of wish the running game had been ramped up earlier this year. I wish Justin Fuente had spent more time with the offense.
Air quotes.
Yeah. Well, you can define that however you want. He says it's for their confidence. I think that's probably a little more to it than that. I just wish if he had made that move earlier in the season or before the season. You're talking about a win over West Virginia and a win over Notre Dame.
Yep.
I do see some irony here looking at the stats. So I've got the printout of the stats, and Tech had a great day carrying the football. 41 carries, 297 yards, 7.2 yards a carry. And I must fall on my sword here. I think this is my fault. I've been talking about how Malachi Thomas doesn't lose yardage. Going in, he had 375 positive yards and 3 negative yards. Well, on Saturday, he had 7 carries. He gained 18 yards, but he lost 8. So he has 7 carries for 10 yards.
Yeah, he was the only player who lost yardage on Saturday.
Right, the only one, including Braxton Burmeister. So for some reason, I brought my calculator with me, and I said, what if you take Malachi Thomas out? Then you have 34 carries for 287 yards, which is 8.4 yards per carry. Yep. So the entire team got 7.2. You take him out, the rest of them got 8.4 yards.
Yeah, there was the kneel down at the very end too, so it would be even higher.
Exactly.
That is true. That would be 33 for 289. So give me.
He brings his calculator to the set. He didn't even use a calculator in his SATs.
8.76 yards per carry if you take out the kneel down at the end and Malachi Thomas.
Now, you talk about yards per carry. I'll talk about yards per play. Virginia Tech averaged 9.7 yards per play on Saturday. Ohio State is first in the country, averaging 8.03 yards per play for the season, which shows you how dominant. I mean, 9.7 yards per play is dominant. Like, over the course of a whole season, That would be number 1 in the country by far. So that just shows you how dominant the Tech offense was over the course of 4 quarters. And there was no let-up either. It wasn't like one little stretch of the game. They were awesome. I mean, they were dominant for 4 quarters of football.
Well, and Braxton Burmeister, you mentioned yards per play. How about yards per attempt for him? 14 yards per attempt for Braxton Burmeister. That is an unbelievable mark.
Yeah, that's nice. So I think I saw, getting back to the yards per play, I think I saw Ox tweet that's Tech's highest yards per play average since the 2002 Syracuse game.
2002?
The one that they lost in the Carrier.
Yeah, with Brian Randall completed like 10 passes, but they were all for like 80 yards.
Yeah. Ernest Wilford had like almost 300 yards receiving. If I may be exaggerating a little bit there. But
no, you're right.
Yeah.
Keith Willis had like an 80-yard touchdown.
Keith Willis is the one I'm thinking about. Yeah,
no, Ernest Wilford too.
Okay,
I mean, Wilford had like 260 receiving yards.
They averaged like
Randall threw for 500 yards in that game, and we lost.
Gosh,
yeah, exactly.
You know what I heard about that game? I heard about of course Tech lost, so they. I think it was early in Brian Steinspring's tenure because he coached the.
It was his first year as full year of offense.
Yeah, he coached the Gator Bowl the year before against Florida State, and I heard that was such an emotional outing for him because they'd done so well and lost anyway that he just broke down in tears in the tunnel after the game. I think he was feeling the pressure at the time because I think Tech had lost a home game or something like that.
Well, the Tech defense wasn't good in 2002. Like the offense, at the beginning of the season, the Tech defense was good. But anyway, let's talk about this year's team and not the 2002 team.
Yeah, we could go for a while.
Yeah, we could go for a while on that.
It did seem like Brad Cornelison opened things up a little bit more. The first play of the game for the Tech offense was a deep shot down the left sideline for Trey Turner. They took another one of those. Turner made the juggling catch on the sideline. Tavion Robinson had a deep pass. I mean, it just seemed like they were throwing the ball downfield way more than we'd seen as of late.
It seemed like the idea was to stress Duke as much as possible early. And Duke was a mess with blown coverages and everything, and couldn't get off blocks. I mean, they were what their statistics said they were on the defensive side of the ball. I was really happy to see Caleb Smith get a touchdown. He is, as far as PFF grades go, he is the number 4 wide receiver in the country in run blocking rating and grade this year for all running backs with 100-plus run blocking snaps. And that's out of like 400 and some wide receivers, I believe. He's number 4 in the entire country. Tavion Robinson's actually 8th. So Tech's wide receivers have been great blockers this year, but especially Smith. And so I thought that was a well-deserved touchdown for him. I thought it was I was really happy to see Tywan Garbett score a touchdown because he's one of the most popular players on the team. And you could see it. You could see how the team mobbed him on the sideline after he scored.
Yeah. I can't remember. Who was the Chris Cotter, I think is his name, was the play-by-play guy. He said, "Oh, this is going to be a popular touchdown." I mean, we're running down the sideline.
Exactly. And I want to make a note about Garbett and also about Burmeister, and both of them are in their 5th years of college. They did not go through senior day ceremonies, which indicates to me that they are both taking the NCAA up on their offer and going to play for a 6th year next season.
Well, and with Garbett, he had the issues last year where he left the team for a while. It's nice to see him in what could be his final game, but probably not. Probably will come back. But final game of the season in Lane Stadium, a huge touchdown for him.
So let's get back to the yards per play thing because I actually did the football stats database search. So 9.7 yards per play, that's the most since 1987. This database that Hokie Sports has goes back to 1987. The most. Second most is actually 9.67 yards per play against Akron in 1995.
Remember that game?
The 77-27 game, yeah. And then third was the 2002 game at Syracuse, and then you go on to some others. Let's see, other notable ones. The Cal Insight Bowl is 5th.
So it's funny. So we lost 2 of the top 5 games.
I'm looking at a list of the top 10, and 2 of them were lost, and they were number 3 and number 5. That is correct, and all the others were 1. What else is of note here? A couple of them are from the Fuente era. 2018 against William and Mary, they averaged 8.5. Last year against NC State is 7th on the list.
Actually, I believe that. That was big play after big play.
Yeah, Tech had a really, really good game. So.
I want to talk about the Caleb Smith touchdown, too. That trick play, it was set up perfectly by Brad Cornelison. They run the Wildcat, run it with Keyshawn King on one play, and then the very next play, toss it back to Burmeister, wide open touchdown.
Yeah. And that's one of those big no-nos as a safety. Like, if you're really confused, like you're not going to be able to go up and make the tackle on that running back. Just make sure before you do anything else that he's actually running the ball before you go running up like that. But it's just another example of why Duke's defense has just not been good this year. Like Duke is one of those defenses like generally you look at most teams on your schedule and you're like, oh, this is okay, they're weak here. We can exploit them here and maybe here, but this unit right here is good, so let's stay away from them. And they're pretty bad all over across the board. They've got some pretty good defensive linemen, I would say, but other than that, I mean, their linebackers are bad, their corners are bad, their safeties are bad.
Well, R.J. Oben, he had to pick. He's been really their only bright spot on defense. Yeah. And that set up Duke, but defense played well. They held them to 3 after that, too. So let's talk about the defense. 17 points given up for the 3rd straight game for Virginia Tech.
Interesting.
Since the Syracuse kind of disaster on defense, they've been consistent. 17, 17.
They're not great against stopping the run, but they're 32nd in the country in scoring defense.
Did you see the stat I tweeted out this morning about Garrett Schrader, Syracuse quarterback?
No.
His game-winning touchdown against Virginia Tech was 45 yards with 19 seconds left to go. Against Louisville, the entire game, he had 46 yards passing.
Yeah, that was not a great day for Syracuse.
So it's
Sean Tucker was only okay with his performance. He wasn't even pleased.
Yeah, you're right.
It was.
So when you tweet out stuff like that, you tweet out the stat and you don't know how people are going to interpret it. Yeah. They're like, oh, is he bashing Tech? It's just one of those things. I just see stats. So I finished up the tweet with something like, oh, it's been that kind of year for Virginia Tech.
And Tech should have played better defensively against Syracuse. But at the same time, Syracuse made some plays in that game like that they haven't made at any point all year. So it's like
winning touchdown was a heck of a play by them.
I know, and they haven't been able to do anything like that against. I mean, he couldn't complete that pass in practice, much less a game, right? But then he went out there and did it.
Yeah, Syracuse, they're going to have a tough time getting bowl eligibility. I believe they play Pitt and NC State in their final 2. They need to win one to get themselves to a bowl.
You can't lose 41-3.
Well, it was the day Lamar Jackson was in attendance. He was having his number retired.
It was like Lamar Jackson was playing.
Maybe he threw on the Malik Cunningham jersey and just went out there for.
So I was watching Packer Durham this morning, and apparently Malik Cunningham saw Lamar Jackson during the game and said, "Oh man, you look older than I thought you would," or something like that. Then he goes out and chucks like 5 touchdown passes.
Yeah, definitely not a great day for Syracuse. Louisville coming out on top in that one. For Tech, again, defense, 17 points, 3rd straight game. And you mentioned they'd struggled on run defense, and that was kind of the big thing heading into this game. Mateo Durant, maybe the next best running back the Hokies would see after Sean Tucker. 10 carries, 33 yards for Durant.
Big. And also getting out to a double-digit lead is big because when you do that, it sort of takes the ball out of the running back's hands to a certain extent. Like Duke threw the ball 28 times, like with their backup quarterbacks, and considering what I know about their backups quarterbacks, that's probably about 10 more times that they should be throwing it in a game, maybe more. Now, Moore and Leonard combined for 33 carries, the 2 quarterbacks. Yeah. So it could have been something like that Tech did schematically to maybe take the ball out of Durant's hands with the read option and let the quarterbacks keep. 196 rushing yards seems like a lot, and it is, but only 4 yards per carry. So it's not like they were like Boston Colleging Virginia Tech and just like gashing them play after play, and Tech couldn't tackle anybody and everything like that. It was a better performance this time.
And some of those yards came. Jordan Moore ran for, I want to say, 40 yards.
He had a 40-yarder,
and that was kind of towards the end of the game.
And it was in garbage time at that point. So Hokies did a good job against the run. Also 4 sacks on the day.
It's the most sacks they've had in a game since the UNC game when they had 6.
Right.
And the big one, Norrell Pollard knocking it out. We mentioned Tywan Garbett bringing it back on the fumble return. Hokies now 5-5, need just one more win to earn bowl eligibility. Where do you see that one coming if they can get it?
Well, their Virginia Tech football itself is awfully experienced in this situation over the last decade.
Last 10 years. Right?
Yeah, so 2012, 2014, 2015, 2018. You're around the 500 mark. A couple of those seasons, I believe Tech was 4-6 and then won their last 2.
Some of Frank's last years were real scrambles to get to a bowl. Unfortunately, they had UVA at the end of the year.
And Mike London was coaching UVA at the time and not Bronco.
I was counting on that one.
Yeah. Right, yeah, exactly. So it's not an unfamiliar situation.
No.
And look at the 2 games that are remaining. Miami is, all their games are close. Like all the last 6 games, like the biggest margin of victory or defeat the last 6 games in a Miami game has been 4 points. I mean, all their games are close. You think they're getting over the hump when they beat NC State and who did they other? Pitt.
Beat Pitt.
Yeah,
in back-to-back weeks.
in a row.
In back-to-back weeks, and then they go out and play bad and almost lose to Georgia Tech, and then they did lose to Florida State.
Yeah.
Who earlier this season I was questioning whether they'd actually win more than a game or 2.
And I'm a little concerned that that's a night game. I'm going to do for my Monday article, if I can remember, I don't have anything to write this down with. I'm going to do a little research and see how Tech has done in night games down there.
Right.
The new stadium is a totally different vibe. That stadium is built. I haven't read this. This is my take on looking at that stadium. You guys know I'm a Dolphins fan. University of Miami and the Miami Dolphins, their attendance isn't that great. Mm-hmm. So I think they've built that thing to really trap the noise. So you can have 20, 30,000 fans in there and make one heck of a lot of noise. Mm-hmm. I watched the Thursday night game where the Dolphins beat
the Ravens and Lamar Jackson.
Beat the Ravens. And to go on a little bit of a tangent, there were a couple things. First of all, the crowd was pretty good and they were loud. But the Dolphins defense, what they did against the Ravens was Miami put 7 guys on the line, all packed them up on the line, and then had 4 guys back in essentially man coverage 5 and 10 yards off the ball.
Yep.
And they played that the entire game, and it worked like a charm. They totally stuffed the run, and Baltimore just wasn't able to do anything in the passing game.
I want to say I saw they showed cover 0 pre-snap 40 times in that game.
Wow.
And Baltimore just couldn't do anything
about
it.
And if it was 3rd and 9, they were lined up at 8 yards. Whatever it was, of course, most of what Baltimore faced was 2nd and long and 3rd and long because they were doing nothing with the running game. But anyway, the whole point I tell that story is I'm just kind of watching that going, are you watching this, Justin Hamilton? This looks interesting. But the Dolphins are a professional team. They tackle well.
Yeah.
They carried out the game plan.
And Miami coming up 7:30 on Saturday down in Coral Gables. And then UVA 2 weeks.
And you don't know Brennan Armstrong's status. I guess he'll be back by the Virginia
He was
State
throwing the ball on the sidelines.
Okay.
He did not play against Notre Dame. But I was thinking about that during the day. I believe UVA plays Pitt this weekend, correct?
Yeah.
Right.
And so if they beat Pitt and beat Virginia Tech, they're coastal champions. So
I thought I read, though, that if Pitt, Tech, and UVA all wind up tied at 5-3, Tech is 5-1 in the division, and they go to the championship.
Has Virginia lost 3 games in conference?
They've lost 2.
They've lost 2.
So they would have to beat Pitt and lose to Tech.
Yes.
Yeah.
So if they beat Pitt and beat Tech, they are coastal champions. So I think maybe benching Brennan Armstrong was more of a precaution.
Yeah.
Notre Dame doesn't mean that much to that team.
You're right, it doesn't. But there's no way UVA is going to win the coastal with that defense.
Against Pitt.
Kenny Pickett's going to score 60 on him.
Yeah, Brennan Armstrong's going to have to be 100%, and it's going to have to be a 60 to 55 kind of thing.
It might be that Wake Forest UNC game we saw a few weeks ago. Should find out the game time for that one today, unless it gets the 6-day hold, which I guess it could. But most likely, I think we find out when that game's going to be played later on today. Justin Fuente will also be at the podium in a little bit here. Speaking of Justin Fuente, if that was his final game coaching in Lane Stadium, which I think you would assume it was, that's a pretty good way to send it off. The fans were, there were no Fire Fuente chants throughout like we saw at Syracuse.
It was cold.
Well, the students are the ones who did it against Syracuse, and the students were all out of the stadium at halftime. So
yeah, both Malcolm and his sister, in air quotes, froze because I just don't think they were. I think most students weren't really ready.
No.
Your average 20-year-old doesn't understand that 45 degrees when you're just standing there is really cold.
And with the wind.
Yeah. So, you talk about that being Fuente's last home game, and it was very cool that they won, and they won by a lot, and the crowd thinned out, and none of that sort of ugliness happened. But I wonder, it's not like I pay attention to Duke football. I wonder if another coach just coached his last game in Lane Stadium, David Cutcliffe.
Yeah, they end the season with Pitt and Miami, or Miami and Pitt. Yeah, they play
Miami and Pitt, and both of those are at home, I want to say.
Okay.
And they're just spiraling. They're really bad.
Yeah, because they I don't remember. Don't they play this Thursday?
They might.
Yeah, I don't remember.
Yeah,
Or not,
sure.
maybe,
No, it can't be Miami.
No,
It
they
can't be
play
Miami.
Louisville and
It's
Miami.
Louisville.
Then Miami.
Yes.
Right. So the Louisville is next, and they have to play Louisville on Thursday night.
Yeah.
And considering what Louisville just did to Syracuse, like Duke's going to go 0-8 this year, and Cutcliffe has done a really good job there. But you got to kind of think that tenure is about to come to an end. But
So if you're looking at Clark Ruland's Twitter feed, he's doing this day X number of years ago, and in 2014, Virginia Tech went down to Duke and upset the 16th ranked Blue Devils. So that was just a lot can happen in 7 years. That was 7 years ago. That's where Duke was. They were ranked number 16 in the country.
yeah, and as far as going back to Fuente, probably the last game in Lane Stadium for him, and you get 297 rushing yards, 276 passing yards, 9.7 yards per play, 573 total yards, 48 points. Like, this is the type of stuff we were expecting when he was hired. And it kind of looked like that's the type of stuff we were getting early in his
Got it
tenure.
in 2016.
Yeah.
Remember the back-to-back games against Boston College and East Carolina in his first year?
I don't remember
And-
the exact stat, but there was a 3-game stretch where Tech outscored their opponents something like 123 to 17.
49 to nothing, and then I think
59 to 7
Seven-
against UNC.
well, no, that was the next year.
Oh, was it?
34-0 UNC, or 34-3.
And
Hurricane.
then there was a huge
East Carolina game was like 64 to 17 or something like
right.
that.
That's what it was.
Yeah, yeah.
So,
So there-
it was 120 something to 20. I
Right,
think.
exactly. So, but
Or worse than that,
So this
actually.
is the type
Yeah.
of offense that when Fuente was hired and he retained Bud Foster, you were like, yeah, we're about to get a bunch of 48 to 17 games,
Yeah.
right? And it just didn't happen.
Did not happen.
But happy to see, if that is his last home game, happy to see it end on a high note.
it's a great way to go out. Hokies again, 5-5, 3-3 in the conference. Need one more win to clinch bowl eligibility. I'm going to send it over to Nick now. I think his segment today is going to be pretty basketball heavy, and if you're watching in YouTube, you can see behind him Nick, an alum of Radford High School, and both coaches today from Radford High School.
Well, first I wanted to do stat time with Scott Glessner.
You got graphics now.
He's
very
he's a real
good stuff
this is
there,
good
man.
high quality graphics right here. No, so Scott Glessner said Virginia Tech stayed even on the turnover margin this past week. Well, I want to say a shout out to Oben for that interception. That was just
That was a great
wild
play, yeah.
and ridiculously good
Yeah.
play. Virginia Tech under Fuente is 37-9 when the turnover margin is even or positive. When they're positive, it's 27-6. When they lose the turnover margin, 6-22.
Wow.
And Fuente said that. He uses those advanced stats to tell him things like that. And he's stood up there in press conferences before, and he's like, look, we study these numbers all the time, and the single most important factor in winning and losing football games is turnovers.
His turnovers, yep.
Stats back it up right there.
Yep.
And then another one, he said it doesn't really matter, obviously. Virginia Tech scored 21 points in the fourth quarter, most under Fuente, and the first time since a loss to BC in 2014.
Wow.
So we scored 21 points in that game in 2014.
In the fourth quarter.
In the fourth quarter.
Do you remember that? Was that the game in Lane Stadium, Chris,
It was
where
high scoring.
BC ran for a late touchdown? I think. to
I believe
win?
it was. And
Yeah.
we scored like a late touchdown, I think, to like Bucky Hodges.
Cosmetically.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And then the last one he had was Virginia Tech has allowed 6 100-yard rushers in the last 5 games.
Wow.
Sounds about right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you have 2 against Syracuse
Two,
and then
Two
consistently
against
after
Syracuse.
that.
Yeah.
And
So
then-
2 in one game. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Jordan Moore ended up running for 100 yards
Yep.
against Tech on Saturday. So
Yeah.
there you go.
And then I was doing a little research here. Tavion Robinson leads the nation in punt return yards with 329, but is second to Middle Tennessee's Jalen Lane, who did not have a punt return against Tech, by the way. He averages an absurd 21.3 yards per return. Tavion's second in the country with only 15.
Yeah. So the guy from MTSU is way out front.
He is ridiculous.
I wonder if maybe they just discovered him after the Tech game, because I know he played in that game.
I think Tech's punt coverage this year has been very good. Like, it's very difficult to actually get a return off against Virginia Tech
Yeah.
because the coverage team.
Because I looked up that Middle Tennessee game. No one returned a punt versus in the Middle Tennessee game.
So I'm
he was
guessing
either
that-
back there, and they just kept pinning him back.
Okay.
Fair catch
Yeah.
or whatever.
So I'm guessing that he has barely enough returns to qualify for the NCAA stat, and probably has a touchdown or two thrown in there that throws everything off.
Yeah, but just the jump from second to first is pretty daggone big right there. And then, like you said, talk about basketball. Obviously, Radford, if you know anything about New River Valley and basketball, Radford is just dominant in basketball. And it really started with Darius Nichols, who's now the graduate or the head coach at Radford University with his brother Shane as the assistant. Darius leads the all-time scoring at Radford High School. Shane was second until Quentin Morton Robertson, who went to Radford and then transferred away last year, was, I think, about 12 points short from Darius, and he dropped over 40 in the state championship game that season.
Couldn't quite get there.
Yeah. It was. He didn't play the fourth quarter, and he still dropped, or second half of the second. Yeah, the fourth quarter.
So when you were talking Radford High School, because Darius Nichols played at West Virginia.
Yes, but he went to Radford High School.
Okay.
Yeah.
So when you're saying Radford,
okay,
yeah.
So we're talking about Radford High School right now.
Yeah, okay.
But yeah, Darius Nichols went to West Virginia, 4-year letterman there. He was 3 points shy of scoring 1,000 points. Shane Nichols went to Wofford 4 years and scored 1,482 points, career points there under Mike Young. Got his coaching career started under Mike Young. Darius also got his D1 coaching career under Mike Young at Wofford. And then Mike Young got his D1 coaching start at Radford University. And he's also a Radford High School graduate.
So give me
that's a lot to absorb.
And I looked through Radford's game notes last night. Mike Young's father, Bob Young, was Darius Nichols' middle school principal.
Yeah, and he is he just passed away, unfortunately.
All right, now I'm going to tell you how big of a game this is for the New River Valley just by looking at StubHub ticket prices.
I bought some tickets last night cheap.
Okay. So St. Francis is this Thursday. Then Sunday is Merrimack. And both of those games are $6. And
that's a Sunday
Cornell on Wednesday, December 8th, $6. Even the Pitt game, which is an ACC game on January 1st, $10, right?
Okay.
Virginia Tech Radford, only 27 tickets left, starting at $15.
See, last night I bought 5 tickets for $9 a piece, so I think I sucked up the last.
Got the last cheap ones.
Last single-digit tickets.
But this is, in the New River Valley, the grand scheme of things, regular Tech fans who aren't from New River Valley just don't see this as a big game. But especially now with Mike Young and then the Nichols brothers over at Radford, and this has really developed into a huge homecoming game. And it really surprised me that they've only played 11 times previously.
I think it's funny. You know how many elite college football coaches have come from the state of West Virginia?
A lot.
Like Saban and was Bowden from West Virginia?
Bowden was from West Virginia.
They grew up like 20 minutes away.
Yeah, exactly. A ton of them have come from West Virginia. And look at how many these good quality, solid college basketball coaches are from Radford.
Yeah.
You wouldn't
So the only other thing I can add to all that trivia is that Darius graduated from Radford High at a time when I believe Ricky Stokes was coaching Virginia Tech. So the question was asked at the time, why didn't Stokes recruit Darius? He did. He just recruited him very poorly, is what I was told. It was kind of haphazard and unorganized, and so he wound up going. I think he went directly to West Virginia, right?
He did.
It's
all
not
4
like
years there.
Yeah, it's like when Tech recruited Pittsnogle. Remember Pittsnogle, who played at West Virginia? Yeah. He came to visit Tech one time, and somehow, despite the fact that Tech only got 2,000 or 3,000 people at games back then, somehow Pittsnogle ended up with tickets like 2 rows from the top in the corner.
Right, even though the Coliseum was pretty much empty.
Right, what kind of recruiting is that?
So Darius played for Bob Huggins,
Yep.
and I was talking to my buddy Keith Weltons last night, and he was describing to me, I'll see him tonight. Keith is a big supporter of Radford University basketball, so he goes to all the games, and he was describing to me a team that is, he said, they're big. When you see this
They're
team,
big boys.
A lot of them look like football players. And he said, and I can't remember exactly how he phrased this, but he said they like for all of them to shoot. And that sounds like Bob Huggins to me. He always had big guys that could shoot, And
9 of the 14 players have also transferred and are either juniors, seniors, or graduates.
No, I know Radford lost to UVA on Friday night. What did they do in their first game?
They played Emory and Henry.
That's right, and they won that. Yes.
Yeah.
Only by 12, though. Only by 12. And I talked to Coach Nichols after that game. He was like, "Yeah, we have to do a lot of revamping of the team
They're
before we
a
get
work
to
in progress.
UVA."
When you have that many transfers on one roster. Most of those guys have never played together before.
Well, and they lost a ton of players too. I talked about Quentin, who's Radford High School legend, second all-time scoring, went to Radford High School, and now he transferred once Coach Jones left, and Coach Jones took a couple of his players down to UNC Greensboro.
Okay, so Mike Jones got hired at UNC Greensboro.
Yes.
To a couple. So is that simple for Quentin Morton Robinson? Is that why he transferred, because Mike Jones left?
Yeah.
And Mike didn't want to take him to UNC Greensboro with him.
So he's up at Purdue Fort Wayne,
Purdue
the
Fort
Mastodons.
Wayne.
Wow.
Mastodons.
Okay.
But so a ton of Radford High School. Malcolm also Radford High School. So just always means a lot to the whole New River Valley and everything. And people have been talking about this game for 2 weeks. I broadcast the Radford High School football games, and you go there, everybody's like, "Well, you going to the game Monday? You going to the game Monday?" Everybody talks about that game. So.
Well, and Nick and I will be on the call for 3304 Sports tonight. So we'll get our Radford flair from Nick on the mic. We're going to talk about the Navy win after the break, and we'll also talk a little more about Radford coming up tonight. Hokies trying to get to 3-0 on the season. And rankings come out today. I believe there's a chance Hokies could be.
I believe Tech was 28th or 29th overall, like when you include others receiving votes.
Yeah.
And that was in the coaches poll. I'm not sure about the AP poll. But, maybe. I mean, Navy beat UVA, who was 25th, and then Tech easily handled Navy on the road. So if Tech's not ranked, they'll be very, very close again.
Yep, chance Hokies end up in the top 25 later on today. We'll talk more hoops.
I think they'll be in the top 25 when they go to New York.
Okay. So
And
it'll be a
the-
ranked matchup with
If they're not
Memphis.
today, then they will be by then. Yeah.
And the women are already there, right?
Yes, women are ranked, and they are now 3-0 after beating George Mason yesterday. We'll talk more hoops on the other side of the break. Stay with us here on episode 208 of the Tech Sideline podcast. We'll be right back. Welcome back to episode 208 of the Tech Sideline podcast. We've already talked about the football win on Saturday. It's a happy podcast here in Tech Sideline land. We're going to talk basketball now after the win against Navy. We already talked about the Radford game tonight a little bit. Jake Lyman on set here with Will Stewart, Chris Coleman, Nick Brown, Malcolm Stewart behind the scenes. We were talking about how Tech could be ranked today in the AP Top 25. Will, you brought up a power rankings of sort that was posted on the NCAA website from Andy Katz.
Andy Katz does a Power 36. This is November 15th, so this is today. And that gets posted on the NCAA website. It says Andy Katz, NCAA.com correspondent. And he's got Virginia Tech men's team at 26th. Now, there is a link in here for the latest AP poll, but that's not out yet, right? Yeah, games through games of October 18th. Nice link, guys. You lead me astray. Anyway, so Andy Katz has Virginia Tech 26. And the women are ranked, right?
The women are ranked. They went 3-0 this week. Wins over Davidson, George Washington, George Mason.
Yeah.
And our friend Evan Hughes was traveling all over the great Commonwealth of Virginia. He went up to Northern Virginia for the George Washington game on Thursday, came all the way back down for the football game Saturday, and then drove straight back up to Fairfax for George Mason on Sunday.
Wait until Thanksgiving week. Like Laser and Burnup are going to have to go New York City, Blacksburg, New York City, or the other way around? I forget.
New York, Blacksburg.
Okay.
Charlottesville.
Both games are. Oh yeah, right. You're right. It's in Charlottesville. Yeah.
Well, and Evan Hughes making a trip to Puerto Rico next week, because that's where the woman will be over Thanksgiving. So
good for Evan Hughes.
Yeah, he'll get to escape a little bit here. I'm not sure who the woman.
I wonder if he needs an assistant.
Hey,
yeah, I might be reaching out to him.
Evan's good, but he never won the Tech Sideline Scholarship. There's a technicality there. Yes, it wasn't being
a lot
awarded.
of people would trade Tech Sideline Scholarship, Jim Nance Award.
Puerto Rico trip.
Puerto Rico.
Yeah.
Well, men's basketball, they took a trip up to Annapolis on Friday night, and a big win. Navy riding high after beating Virginia a few days prior, and Tech really never lost control. They were in control the entire game, winning that game by 20, and the offense continued to live up to the hype. 77 points on the day.
So the very first play of the game, Storm Murphy comes out and throws an awful turnover, and then Tech just romps.
So they got up 22-6.
Yeah.
And I was like, whoa.
I want to say it was 2-0, and then Tech scored the next 15 points or something.
Right,
like that.
and I want to say Tech made their first 5 shots or something. And,
something like that,
and But then their first miss was would have been a point-blank layup, but it got blocked.
Yeah.
So Tech is one of the most efficient offensive teams in the country in the half court.
Man, I texted you, and I was like, geez, these guys are dialed in.
Yeah, they were really dialed in that game. I think they're really good, of course, but I also think Navy winning at UVA in that first game, that'll open your eyes a little bit more.
Right.
When you're going to have to go play on the road and beat them. And Navy went 15-3 last year, so that's a good win for Virginia Tech. It's funny. I sometimes after Tech wins a big basketball game, I hardly ever read the Saber, which is our sister site, but I do whenever Tech wins a big basketball game just to see what they're saying. First of all, all their fans on their basketball board refer to Tech as VPI because they think it's insulting to us. It's not. Please continue to lob your fake insults.
Let me preface what you're about to say by saying that generally the commentary on their basketball board is very good.
It is
intelligent. They're knowledgeable basketball fans.
They were complaining, though. They were like, Navy just made all their shots against us, and they didn't make them against Virginia Tech, and that's not even true. I went back and Sunday night watched some of the UVA Navy game and compared it to the Virginia Tech Navy game, and UVA wasn't guarding them on the outside of the three-point line very well. Navy's ball movement was good, and they had plenty of time to set up for shots. Virginia Tech got through screens really, really well. Didn't allow Navy to get good three-point shots off with their feet set and everything like that. So Tech just did I was very impressed with how Tech defended outside the three-point line.
I think Steve Lapis was the color commentator, and he was complimenting Virginia Tech's perimeter defense.
I thought they were very strong getting through screens.
So here, regarding Navy, if I remember correctly, they shot 9 of 19 from outside against UVA. And didn't they shoot 3 of 25 against Tech? So that is 12 of 44, right? 2 of their players in the first half of UVA combined to go 7 of 7.
Yeah.
Other than that, they're 5 of 39. Other than those 2 guys during the first half of that game.
Yeah, just got hot at the right time.
So I said on Twitter afterwards, Navy's going to win a lot of basketball games. I'm probably right, but after crunching that stat in my head, I'm thinking,
I don't think it's a good idea to use 2 games in basketball as a point of reference for trends that are,
Yeah.
I mean, Navy has faced 2 ACC teams. Like, their schedule's going to soften up.
And they're playing Louisville.
They play Louisville.
Right.
3 straight ACC teams to start off the year.
Go Navy.
Is Louisville really that good?
Louisville just
major
lost
team?
to, who did they lose to?
Furman. They lost to
the
Furman.
Paladins.
What's been going on with the ACC? We saw Georgia Tech, Pitt, and UVA all lose the first night.
I'm not surprised that Pitt lost. They lost their 2 best players, which indicates those 2 guys entered the transfer portal last year before the season ended.
Yep.
Like, unfortunately, not quite quick enough. I
Wish
they'd
Tech.
entered it before they played Virginia Tech.
Yes.
But anyway, so when your 2 best players enter the portal before the season is even over, that's indicative of a deeper
Bad
problem.
culture,
Something bad's going on there, to me at least. Georgia Tech, I've said many times, I don't think is well coached. I think they had an experienced team last year and caught fire at the right time in a year of COVID and won the ACC tournament, but I don't think they're well coached. And who was the other? Oh, no, but I guess Furman is the surprising one that they would beat Louisville on the road.
Furman
like
beat
that.
Louisville, and then North Carolina down to the wire with Brown.
That's the thing, and we don't know how well coached UNC is now.
Yes.
I mean, you
We
lose.
do not know that yet. That's
right,
right.
you did not know. I mean, you remember when they hired Darty? I mean, that was all. I mean, they had losing records under
was a
him,
dumpster
UNC
fire,
basketball.
yeah.
It was horrible. It only lasted, 2 years?
Yeah, they pulled the plug fairly quick.
Fairly quickly. So, and that's the thing about UNC hires from within a lot. I mean, Roy Williams was a UNC guy. They've hired another UNC guy. And
Guthridge, of course, was on Dean's staff.
So if you limit yourself to a small pool of candidates because you have to hire a UNC guy, right?
Well, and that's one of the criticisms of Michigan football. They kind of
Right.
are/were the same way.
Right.
So, I don't want to be Mr. Gloom and Doom guy, but ACC basketball, which has been the best basketball historically, is not impervious to what's going on in college athletics as a whole, which is all the money going to the SEC and the Big Ten. You can eventually hold up against that, but you're going to start to take on water. And we've seen it in the Big Ten ACC Challenge, where the ACC dominated it the first 8 to 10 years, and it's flipped in the last 8 to 10 years, and the Big Ten has won most of them.
And in 2004, the first year of ACC expansion, the ACC had the biggest TV contract, right?
They made, yes, they made, I believe this exact statistic was that they paid out more in revenue sharing than any other conference.
Right.
And it hasn't changed a whole lot since then, and other conferences have.
Yes.
And you mentioned the Big Ten, the SEC too. Alabama's been very good lately. Auburn continuing to get better. It seems like the SEC basketball scene is starting to grow as well.
Well, all you need to know is that Buzz Williams has been, I'm not sure now, Buzz Williams has been an excellent coach. And an SEC school hired Buzz Williams away from an ACC school. I know it's Texas A&M and Virginia Tech, but that kind of stuff is the coaching talent in the SEC in particular is just going to go up and up and up because they can pay obscene amounts of money.
They have so much excess revenue now.
They can pay a basketball coach
whatever they want.
Yeah.
If that's what they want to do, they can do it. It just comes down to whether or not it's worth it to them.
Well, it's been a tough start to the season for the ACC. Didn't mention Clemson almost lost to Wofford on Friday as well. So that's 6 teams that have at the very least gotten themselves in a scare in the first week of the college basketball.
And Florida
team.
State got smoked by Florida yesterday, right? Or was it the day before yesterday?
It was, I don't know if it was yesterday or the day before, but yes, they played poorly and lost by something like 15 points, I think.
So Hokies need to keep their head on a swivel over this next week. They've got Radford, St. Francis, Merrimack before heading to Brooklyn for the preseason NIT. Where they'll play Memphis and then either Xavier or Iowa State. Looking back at that Navy game, Justin Mutz didn't have the highest stats on the team, but I think we just got to talk about the highlight plays he keeps making. He had an alley-oop against Maine, another alley-oop against Navy, but the main one, the putback dunk, was unbelievable.
Oh, yeah. We were watching that downtown, and we didn't have volume. And sometimes you have to have volume to really appreciate like how big it was. Like I knew it was an awesome play live, but when I went back like yesterday and watched a replay of the game with volume, like those announcers were really excited about that play.
Yeah, I fell out into the floor.
Did you really?
his whole thing right now is that he's not a big trash talker. He's not a big flexer. He throws that thing down, comes rolling out of there, and just looks at his own bench and is just, yep.
I love the reaction.
Yep. Right.
He's an extremely underrated athlete.
Yeah.
He gets off the floor quickly. He's a 6'6", 6'7" power forward who can score from inside and outside. Maybe he's not your traditional like Mike Young power forward. Your traditional Mike Young power forward is actually Keve Aluma, because that's like Keve was playing power forward at Wofford for Mike Young. A lot of different lineup options for Tech this year as far as their inside
Speaking
goes.
of big guys, I find myself, I don't think I really did this in the game in Castle, but watching TV the other night, there were a couple times where John Ogiaco looked like Keve Aluma to me, where I'm just I'm tweeting and I look up and he makes a move and I'm like, oh, nice move by Aluma, and it's not Aluma, it's Ogiaco.
Yeah, he's definitely improved his footwork, I would say. His development's been good. And, last year was tough for him because players were not allowed the individual skill work with the coaches in the offseason due to COVID. And then once the season started, Ogiaco was hurt then anyway. So it was very difficult for him to make progress as a player last year. But, I don't think he's not going to be like a three-point shooter like Aluma or everything like that. But he's going to be a fine player for Tech. He'll have 2 more years after this. And,
I was going to say, where is he?
He's going to be Tech's starting center for the next 2 years.
Yeah,
most likely.
If he continues to improve like this, I think the one limiting factor is and I said this on the last podcast, I don't think he has the greatest hands in the world, but he's becoming. Like I tweeted out after one move he made, I said that post move was textbook. I don't remember where it was in the context of the game. I just remember watching the move and thinking, that's how they teach you to do it.
And it seems like he's developed each year. I mean, the first year he looked very raw. Last year, I remember seeing him on TV and just thinking, that's Big John. Like he's grown so much.
It's huge, yeah.
And then this year, it seems like he's getting the technical aspect down and just looks more polished out on the floor.
Yeah, and Mike Young is on record saying big men develop slower than guards. Yeah. Tech has been fortunate a few times to have big men that were really good as freshmen, like Coleman Collins, Jeff Allen, Kerry Blackshear.
Coleman Collins was phenomenal.
We're all really good as freshmen, but that's rare.
Yeah.
So generally, big men have to be developed over time, and you don't want to give up on them too early because you never know when the light's going to come on. It didn't come on for Aluma as far as like scoring in double figures until his 4th year of college.
And good for Ogiaco for being patient and continuing to work.
Right.
Want to mention Joe Bamisil. Did anybody see his windmill dunk the other day?
I did.
Speaking of development, that was an unbelievable dunk.
Speaking of guys not being patient.
Yeah.
That was kind of what made me think about
Joe
it.
was one of those guys. He's a unique dude. He's a pretty deep thinking dude.
Yeah.
So I don't know exactly how or why he makes his decisions, but I think he played for 3 high schools in 4 years in Richmond, and now he's on his 2nd college in as many years. Right. So that's just kind of how he is.
And this brings me into, I was looking through the YouTube comments of last week's show, and a viewer from Japan, he didn't have a name, it was kind of just a username. But
username from Japan.
He is from Japan, one of our fans, and he said he couldn't ask this live because obviously he's in Japan. That show is at 3 in the morning over there. He asked who of the 4 that left could have helped this team the most this season. Beatty, Radford, Cone, and Joe
Bamisil. I would feel more comfortable if Virginia Tech had one more wing, because they're a point guard injury away from Couture going back to point guard, and then your only wing off the bench is Darius Maddox.
Yeah, I really like Tyrese Radford as a player, but if you had asked me at the end of the year, you can have Bamisil or Radford moving forward. I actually might not have said this at the end of last year, but in learning how Mike Young puts this team together, and he's got 5 guys that can shoot now, I probably would have gone with Bamisil.
So Bamisil, I would have said Radford originally, but yes, I agree. Moving forward, I think Bamisil's probably the
Bamisil would not limit the offense in ways that Radford would. Radford still not being a great 3-point shooter. You would, having 5 guys on the court who can shoot. If you can coach those guys how to pass and when to pass, you're gonna be capable of scoring a lot of points. But if you take that down to 4 players or 3 players, 4 is fine. But there were times last year when Tech only really had 2 or 3 shooters on the court at a time.
It's interesting. There's different ways you can get a crowd fired up, and I was thinking about this when they were playing in Castle the other night against Maine. The student turnout was really good, but there weren't very many traditional highlights. Tech had a couple of dunks. I think Mutz had a couple.
They had the alley-oop.
The alley-oop to make it 10-2 early in the game set the tone.
The first 5 minutes, you had the back-to-back Naheem threes and then the
Yeah.
dunk. That was probably the highest moment for the crowd.
But in general, Virginia Tech doesn't run up and down the floor.
Yeah.
Right. It's not Buzz Williams' team.
But so that's one way you can get the crowd fired up, is running up down the floor and dunking and things like that. But good ball movement in the half court, whipping the ball around the perimeter and then nailing the
People
three.
can see that and appreciate it.
Yeah.
Or Storm Murphy, he's already done it many times this year. He's going to do that. I don't know what it's called, where you dribble at a guy and he steps back. It's the step back.
It's called
jumper.
a step back.
The step back jumper.
Imagine that.
Has anybody fallen down yet in this young season?
The one guy from Maine,
Almost
the first
did.
time he did it, when he missed the shot, almost fell down. He was
Somebody's
very
going
close.
to fall down.
And for Watford, I know he had at least one play where he nutmegged a defender.
Yep.
He did. Chris Paul did that last night in the NBA too, for the Suns against the Rockets.
It's amazing that Chris Paul is still playing.
I know.
I watched him play in college when I was in college.
And I'm a
that's such
Phoenix
a high
Suns
level.
fan. Watching last year when they traded for Chris Paul, I was like, this dude's old. He's not going to be good. That dude
Yeah.
can still play.
Yeah.
50% from the field for the Hokies on Friday night against Navy. 42% from long range. You mentioned everybody can shoot. Hunter Couture was probably the best shooter on that night. 19 points, 5 of 7 from long range.
Yeah, the balance of this team and having, any of those guys can go for double figures on any given night. I think we saw in game one when neither Aluma or Storm Murphy went in double figures, but Naheem Aline and Justin Mutz and Gassan off the bench picked up the slack, and even Ojiaka off the bench. This time around, you had a big game from Aluma, and then you did have Murphy had a better game this time around. But you didn't see a great shooting performance from Naheem Aline this time, and Gassan didn't go off for 15 off the bench like he did in game one. This time it was Hunter Couture instead. Tonight it might be Storm Murphy.
So digging down into Storm a little bit, the one thing we have not seen this year is he's 2 of 9 from 3-point range.
Oh yes, right, and he's like 43 or 44% for his career.
He's a career 40+% shooter.
Yeah.
So that'll come. We haven't really seen that yet.
Yeah.
I mentioned last week I have this theory that Hunter Couture and Naheem Aline cannot have big nights on the same day. And so far, it stands. Aline had a good night in game one, Couture in game two.
I hope they save it for some point during the ACC tournament.
Me too.
And the
Or
Couture
NCAA tournament,
charge
sorry.
count is up to 3 on the season.
Yes,
Yeah,
he
'cause he
had
had
two.
two
I
the other
mentioned
night.
I marked that down for the podcast. Yes, I like the first one the best. I thought that was one of his better ones he's had. I'm gonna start grading Hunter Couture.
Yeah, why don't we have a video like top 10 Hunter Couture drawn charges?
I don't know. It seemed perfectly played, and then like great call. I love it. I love it. We still need the whiteboard behind Chris with Hunter Couture's charge count.
Always be drawing charges.
And you mentioned Keve Aluma and Storm Murphy looked better. They only combined for 13 points against Maine, 31 against Navy. Keve Aluma with 20.
That
led all scorers.
There was a little concern about his back since he had the brace on, but I guess that fear has been put to
They
rest.
just showed him up at Navy kicking a field goal. and
Yeah, I think he's
Those
fine.
pictures were hilarious. Coming
I actually have not gone back and looked at the Navy Twitter feed yet, but some of like this.
all right.
God, some of the like the one with like Mike Young with the assault rifle and with the sword. I assume those have made it.
That
in
one
there.
has made it out there.
Okay.
My favorite one is the one with the entire team standing around a Humvee with
assault
guns.
rifles, yeah.
Like that's gonna be a meme that's gonna be everywhere for the rest.
Absolutely.
There's going to be some poo-pooers on Twitter about that.
Oh, that's okay.
Those young men are setting a poor example.
Yep. Well, it is, but that's okay.
Well, Keve Aluma, he got to the line 10 times, scored 20 points, had 11 from Storm Murphy. That's just a good road test for this team early. I was listening to Laser and Burn Up on the radio pregame, and they were saying it was a pretty good environment in Annapolis, and the Hokies took care of it.
I think it's smart scheduling. I think Tech has a schedule made for Selection Sunday. I don't know what's so fun.
I have found the Twitter feed where Navy announced their last tweet of the game, and yes, there is Mike Young with an assault rifle, and there's also you lost by a bigger gap than Beatty's front teeth.
Oh my God!
But let's not spend the podcast.
You probably shouldn't say that on a Virginia Tech podcast.
It was on Twitter. I didn't make it up.
Anyway, where were we? It's a schedule build for Selection Sunday. All right, so you play Navy at home, and I don't know where they're going to end up in the computer rankings. But if you play them at home, maybe it's a quad 3 win.
Yep.
But since you play them on the road, maybe it's a quad 2 win. And Virginia Tech's home schedule is filled with Merrimacs and Cornells and St. Francis's and people like that. But it's who they're playing on neutral court and on the road. And you don't have to win all those games. Just win a few of them. And that's really going to improve your resume. I mean, last year, it was a shortened season because of COVID, but Virginia Tech had 3 Q1 wins the whole season. And they might have 3 or more by the end of December this year, which is really going to help them in the computer ratings and the net when it comes time to make those decisions on Selection Sunday. So, to me, that's what the Navy game was. Tech played well, but by playing them on the road, I mean, it takes it from a Q3 win to probably a Q2 win or something like that.
And you look at all of the neutral or road games that Tech plays before the new year. You've got Memphis, either Xavier, Iowa State, St. Bonaventure, Dayton, North Carolina, Duke. I mean, that's 6 opportunities to go get most likely at least a quad 2 win.
Right. So I assume St. Bonaventure won again yesterday.
I believe so.
Okay,
Yeah.
so they're ranked. What are they, like 24th?
They were 23. They'll go up.
Okay,
obviously.
so it was possible
Nice.
that Virginia Tech versus St. Bonaventure in Charlotte on December 17th is a top 25 battle.
Yes.
It'll be one of the key games of the week in college basketball.
And Xavier should be good. Memphis, again, they're 12, I believe, in the preseason poll. We'll see where
Apparently
they end up.
Memphis plays really good defense.
Yeah,
I
they
was
do.
reading through some stuff on
They
our
also
basketball.
have Imani Bates,
Imani
who
Bates.
could be a generational basketball player.
Well, and Imani Bates probably going to be a matchup for Justin Mutz, who he said his goal was to be better defensively, and I think he's lived up
He
to
wants
that
to,
so
he wants
far.
to be all ACC defense, right? Well,
Yes.
Now, granted, the ACC media won't. Maybe some of them will see this game. It's not a conference game that we're talking
Yes.
about, Mutts against Memphis, but it's a chance to get that.
Oh, they'll be
campaign
watching
started.
this one.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Tech, in my opinion, will be
Unless-
ranked
unless-
going into this
unless
game,
they're
and
lazy.
Memphis could be top 10.
Yeah.
And that's a week from Wednesday, coming up quick. Thanksgiving's next week, and that's up in the Barclays Center preseason NIT. But again, 3 games before that for men's basketball: Radford, St. Francis, Merrimack, all coming up in Castle Coliseum within the next 7 days. How do the Hokies avoid being upset before and maybe looking ahead to some of those bigger games?
Just, I don't know a lot about. Actually, I know nothing about Merrimack, and I know next to nothing about St. Francis. I know something about Radford because they're from 10 miles away, but just Radford does not look like they have the capability of beating Tech. They kind of struggled to put away Emory and Henry, who's Division III.
Yep.
2. They moved up to D2
Oh, did they
this
move
year.
too?
Yeah.
Okay. And then UVA handled them easily on Friday night. So yeah, I mean, I think Tech. Honestly, I mean, it sounds cliche, but just show up and try halfway decently and
Stay
win those
dialed
3
in.
games. Yeah.
So the preseason NIT being in the Barclays Center is kind of cool because that's where the ACC tournament is this year.
Yep.
So Tech gets a chance to go up there and play in that facility and kind of get used to being around.
Well, and the Hokies have been good in those preseason tournaments over the last couple of years. You mean Maui, Michigan State win, Villanova up in Uncasville last year. So.
I've always said I wanted to take a train up to New York to one of the basketball
We got to do
events.
that, dude.
Well, I mean, we play UVA the same weekend. I'm probably going to be announcing something football coaching related.
We'll go to the ACC tournament.
Yeah.
ACC tournament in the Barclays Center is going to be cool. I'm hoping we can get some people up there, cover that one.
So let's go over this state, Jack. This state, Jack. So November success, and they put this up during the game the other night. Virginia Tech has won 19 of their last 22 games, now 20 of 23 in November. 31, and this was put in during the game, so it doesn't include the win over Navy. 31-7 since 2015, tied for the 12th most wins in the NCAA in the month of November.
Wow.
And 51-14 since 2011. And of course, the wins over number 3 Michigan State and number 3 Villanova. Is that right?
Yep. Yeah.
Yep, both top 3. So Hokies hoping to get 3 more wins before heading to New York, and that one against Memphis going to be tough. Xavier and Iowa State also good. Let's check in with the YouTube chat, Nick. Any good questions in there today?
Mostly about football. I will start with a basketball one. I mentioned it to Chris during our break. Hypothetical Tech basketball Sweet 16 team, 1-game series versus this year's team.
Mm-hmm.
And what you've seen in 2 games, who would come out victorious?
Man, that would be a good matchup.
Because it's a big good matchup because they're two totally different styles. I mean, that team, Justin Robinson's in the NBA, Nikhil's in the NBA. Med was a really high-level college player who's played in the G League.
He's played in the G League.
And
KJ's in Europe.
Exactly. So that was a really, really talented team. They love to push the tempo and get out in transition and score. This Virginia Tech team, they do not crash the offensive boards because their main focus is to get back on defense, not give up any transition points, and turn it into a half-court game.
Yep.
So the team that was able to dictate their own way of playing would win, in my opinion. I think if this current Virginia Tech team was able to deny transition points to the Justin Robinson, Nikhil Alexander Walker team, then this team would win. And now so it would come down to a half court matchup. And it's not that team wasn't good in half court basketball because they still were.
Yeah.
I would probably pick the Sweet 16 team, but I think it'd be a really interesting matchup just because of the differentiating styles of play.
I'm mad that we can't actually see that. That would be cool.
It would be.
Storm Murphy against Justin Robinson and Kerry Blackshear against Keve Aluma. That'd be great stuff.
It would be. And I would love to see a 7-game series. Obviously,
Yeah,
all of this
7-game
hypothetical,
series.
but if you did a 7-game series, I think you might get a better feel. Because one game, anything can happen.
Right.
We've seen that before.
Sure.
So, but definitely would be a good battle there. What do we got on football, Nick?
So after UVA game, if Fuente is out, what happens for the bowl game? Is he gone after the UVA game? Do you keep him for a bowl game? Or what all happens?
I mean, that would come down to discussions. No, the thing is, I guess if you kept him through the bowl game, you'd be firing him effective January 1st or whenever the bowl game was.
Reduced buyout.
It would be a reduced buyout. If I were him, I expect, I'm taking my extra $2.5 million and looking for my next job.
Yeah, if I was him, I would not.
I would not want to do that. So then it turns over to somebody like Justin Hamilton or somebody like that. And but at the same time, he's going to be looking for his next job.
They're all
too.
going to be looking for jobs.
Vance Weiss is going to be looking for his job, and Vance Weiss is going to get hired by somebody for sure. So you could be looking at a situation in the bowl game where you have some quality control guys or some GA guys move up into full-time assistant roles. Maybe even a guy like Tenuta as head coach for the bowl game, something like that.
It's kind of cool.
Yeah, so it's not a big deal though. I mean, teams who fire their coaches have to deal with this all the time.
I actually don't pay attention to what I don't know what most teams do.
But that doesn't matter. It's just a bowl game.
Yeah.
Or anybody who fires their coach is not playing in an important bowl game. And like 10 years from now,
Typically,
you're
they're
not
playing in a bowl game at all.
or they're not playing in a bowl game at all, right? So it's just not something that's going to be. It'll be interesting to see what happens, but it's not going to be something that's significant for long-term Virginia Tech football.
All right, and then the last one, sitting amongst the FBS Division I teams, where is Virginia Tech football prestige-wise? So I'm assuming this question is like, where in all-time programs does Tech rank? Are they as relevant as Tech fans really think they are in the grand scheme of the country, or are they just kind of an afterthought in most of the country?
They're limited from a national standpoint because they have to play too many games against Dukes of the world and games against teams with small fan bases who don't care about football. And as much as I respect what Pitt has done this year, nobody goes to their games. And as much as I respect how much Bronco Mendenhall has turned around UVA's football program, well, they hosted Notre Dame this past weekend and came into this game 48,000 people there.
Yeah.
Tech had more people for Duke than UVA did for Notre Dame. So part of it is that Virginia Tech plays in a, small market share conference, we'll call it, where not a lot of fan bases care about football. I think the Virginia Tech brand, because you saw it on ESPN this year, first game of the season against North Carolina in Enter Sandman, and then Notre Dame also a Saturday night game. I mean, the entrance and everything like that. I think Tech's brand, I don't know where I would rank it. I'd have to sit here and look at every team right in front of my face to see where I think Tech ranks from a prestige standpoint. I still think it's quite strong. I still think it's third in the ACC. probably behind Clemson and Florida State.
Florida State.
I think Miami will get talked about, but Miami and Virginia Tech are never going to recruit against each other.
Yeah.
Not very much, at least. So yeah, I mean, I think Virginia Tech has a top 3 brand in the ACC, and if they operate at max efficiency, then we certainly have a chance to play Clemson in the ACC title game a whole lot over the course of time.
Yeah, it's an interesting question, and I don't really know where I stand on it. I have a bunch of random thoughts. I don't think I have a coherent answer. But like one thought that again randomly goes through my head is, Kansas State was a great football team 20 years ago. Kansas State was one blown Big 12 championship game away from, I believe, playing for a national title.
That's right.
I think it was 1998.
It was.
And they lost to a Texas A&M team they should have beaten. But I couldn't tell you anything about Kansas State these days. And I wonder if that's kind of the perception of Virginia Tech nationally. So I'm looking at Tech's schedule. They've played on ESPN, ESPN2, ESPN2. And other than that, it's RSN and the ACC network, or even streaming, or FS.
And that's the
FS1.
fault of the league, though.
Yeah,
It's just Tech doesn't play that many intriguing matchups, like I say.
So one of the things that's going on is like NC State and Wake played this past weekend, right? And I think
right.
they were ranked number 16 and number 12. And I believe that game was on the ACC network. I don't believe it was even on like an actual ESPN channel.
So if you had Comcast, you couldn't watch.
All right. So I think, and if there's anybody that can correct me, go ahead. But I'm just seeing more and more of that. I'm seeing more and more games that you would ordinarily think are fairly high-profile games in this conference, and they're shuffled over to the ACC network.
That's intentional to a certain extent.
Well, and you got one coming up this weekend, Virginia Tech and Miami. And they're on the ACC network where nobody's going to watch.
Right, and so everybody who has Comcast and has not canceled Comcast, they want you to call Comcast and say, I'm canceling because,
My concern is that could be the strategy, or it could just be, we'll just push the ACC teams over onto the network.
I mean, that could certainly be part of it, too. And the problem is like, even if it is the strategy, what if everybody does that and Comcast is like, you know what, we still don't care.
Right. How's that working out for you so far?
Right.
You've been trying that for 2 years now since they launched the network, and Comcast still isn't on board.
Yeah, so your brand to a certain extent is tied into your conference. I mean, there's just not a lot. I mean, even if there's not a lot of intriguing in-conference matchups for Virginia Tech.
No.
And that is, there's nothing they can do about that. But I still think the brand of the program is strong. And I will say this, and I don't have an answer to this question, and it's interesting you bring up Kansas State, because when I thought Kansas State football over the years, I always thought the only reason they were any good at all is because of Bill Snyder. It appears to be the case. So how do non-Virginia Tech fans feel about Frank Beamer and Virginia Tech?
Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Do they feel it's the same situation? Oh, if Beamer's not coaching them, they're not that good.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, I do think we have some advantages that Kansas State does not have. We're in a better recruiting area than Kansas State is. We have a better fan base than Kansas State has.
Bigger. They have a good fan base, just not as big.
Right. We can dedicate more resources to the football program than Kansas State has. So I do think Virginia Tech's ceiling is higher than Kansas State's.
Right.
Yeah.
All right, and then last news, I just want to say 6-day hold on UVA for game start.
6-day hold.
But,
so we'll find out Sunday when Tech is playing UVA.
But besides that,
the Coastal Division would be pretty much, I guess, probably maybe cleared up by Sunday.
I think if Pitt wins, then
they clinch.
It's done.
If Pitt wins, it's over. If Virginia wins, which again, stopping Kenny Pickett with that defense not going to be easy, but
Pitt's going to win.
If
I know.
If Virginia does win, that could the Coastal could come down to that final game. So that would make it interesting. Chris, what is coming up on Tech Sideline over the next couple of days? I know we got basketball tonight, football coming up.
Yeah, I guess we'll do a Monday Thoughts today.
I will. I don't think it's going to be a monster because it was Duke. I'm not particularly moved, but there is some stuff I want to look at. Like I was telling Chris before we went on the air that I was looking at Tech's attendance, home attendance this year. And as I was looking at it, I was accumulating more and more numbers and stats and thoughts, and I'm like, oh, this is too much for the podcast. So I'll put that in today's Monday Thoughts. It's attendance trends under Justin Fuente, how many games sold out each year? What was the schedule actually like? And of course, 2020 is not included in this discussion because it's kind of out the window.
It's kind of an interesting week with 2 weeknight basketball games.
Yeah,
2 weeknight home basketball games tonight and Thursday.
Yeah.
Yep. Got Radford and St. Francis. I'm assuming David Cunningham will be covering those.
Yeah, he will. And it's going to be a normal week of content.
Yep. And
So when do the soccer teams play again?
Friday, 7:30.
Well, the men are. It's announced.
Men, we will find out in a little over an hour here where, who, and when they are playing. Women will play. What is it? Friday at 7:30
But
in
that's
Fayetteville
at Arkansas, right?
against Arkansas. So I'm assuming that'll be televised somewhere. We'll let you know on Wednesday probably, so you can get ready for that one. We'll let you know on Wednesday where the men are playing too, because I feel like for Tech to get their first team national championship, soccer can just be so crazy sometimes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Always got an opportunity.
I want to point out that 2 of the 4 number 2 seeds have already lost in the first round.
Right.
Wow.
So it's certainly not out the window
Yeah.
that Tech can easily pull off that, and then they'll have either Purdue or Notre Dame out after that. Notre Dame's number 3.
So this Friday round, how many teams are in that round?
32.
Round
They're down
32.
to 32.
So this is to go to the Sweet 16.
So they put 64 in the tournament?
They do.
Okay, so it's just like basketball.
Well,
It's just like basketball, except for they don't have a play-in because they don't care about TV money. Yeah.
3 of the 4 number 1 seeds are ACC schools for women's soccer.
and
Wow.
are Duke and North Carolina in that?
UNC is number 2.
They got knocked
UVA
out.
is 1. Duke is 1. Florida State is 1.
Well, and Tech women's soccer, I want to say they tied both Duke and North Carolina and should have won both of those games. So they played tight with good teams. Opportunity for
So
them
get on a roll, yeah.
to get to the Sweet 16 after a few down years for that program. And again, we'll let you know where the men are after that comes out in just over an hour here. Also, Tech women's basketball back in Castle Coliseum Wednesday, Coppin State, and I believe Chris Hirons will be covering that as well. So, and then wrestling too. But we'll have more on that on Wednesday. But wrestling with 2 dual meets on TSL on Twitter. Chris Coleman to my left, lead analyst and columnist for TechSideline.com at Chris Coleman, TSL on Twitter. In our 4th chair today, Nick Brown, our resident Radford expert at Nick Brown 33 on Twitter. And then behind the scenes, Malcolm Stewart always does a great job. I'm Jake Lyman, your host, signing off for episode 208 of the Tech Sideline podcast. Enjoy the game tonight, Hokies fans, and we'll talk to you on Wednesday.